My grandmother passed away from advanced dementia about 2 years ago. And towards the end of her life, she became completely incapacitated, relying completely on either family members or a member of the hospice care team to help her carry out the daily activities of living, if you could call that even living. And I remember on my last visit back to Vietnam, a long time ago, before, she passed away, she has reduced in size. It's such a strange thing for me to say this, but it seems as though she has shrunken over the years, and she became a smaller version of herself. It's a strange thing to say, but she has shrunken, and it seems though she's now only, half of the size. Um, People say when you get older, you do shrink in size, both physically and spiritually. And that's what happened to my grandmother. She's now just, you know, a shell of her former self. She's no longer my grandmother. I know it's such a strange thing to say, but she's no longer there. And I think she would agree because she no longer remembers my face anymore. Her beloved grandson, she no longer remembers anyone anymore. Everybody becomes stranger in the house. But yet she still allows people to look after her. But everyone is strangers. She doesn't remember who we are. She doesn't remember my name, her favorite grandson. But yeah, sure, you can talk to her and she will tell you stuff. They would often not make any sense, but yeah, she could still sense that there's some familiarity. She doesn't know who these people are, but somehow they, she knows that they love her and she loves them, and that's why she feels safe around us. Anyways, I said before, either in passing or I might have made an entire video about it, but I said, Alzheimer's disease, dementia, it's a horrible disease. It's such a cruel disease. It doesn't discriminate, you know. It doesn't matter if you lived a good life or you lived a bad life. It doesn't discriminate. Yeah, and it's such a dehumanizing disease. It stripped a person sometimes completely of any sense of dignity they have left. I'm reflecting upon my clinical experience, and I think back when I was just a junior, a rookie healthcare worker. Um, I haven't graduated from nursing school yet, and I was working in a hospital as a sitter. Now, a sitter in the hospital is what we call someone who is assigned one-on-one to a patient, because the patient is either confused, they are at risk of falls, or at risk of harms to themselves or others, or maybe they just need a little bit more attention, tender loving care, reassurance and comfort because they are in a strange environment. They just need that extra bit of care because they are, vulnerable. They need that one-on-one supervision. And I worked as a sitter for about 1 or 2 years, being assigned to these demented patients. Some of them are not pleasantly confused at all. I had the pleasure of looking after these patients. And let's call this client Ben. That's not his real name, but I want to talk about Ben. Ben used to be a farmer, a successful businessman. He was a rotund man with a firm handshake and big smile. That's what I heard from his visitors and friends and family members. Ben was the life of the party. He would greet everyone with such a warm welcome. And he was a great mentor to the young men in his life. I heard from his wife personally, and I heard from, his friends who are always so eager to visit Ben every single day. Every chance they get, they would come and see Ben, and that warms my heart. But Ben in hospital is a completely different person from what I have seen. You know, Ben was aggressive. Ben was emotional. Ben was unpredictable. And Ben needs help. Ben needs someone to be there with him. But he doesn't want anyone to be near him. And no one wants to be near him. And I don't blame them. When Ben has a bad day, he would not engage with anyone. No one could get a word out of him. No matter how experienced they are at looking after people with dementia, even the most experienced nurse on the unit could not get Ben to do anything. Ben does his own things. Ben has already checked out. His mind is in a state of complete oblivion. He doesn't know what is real and what is not real anymore. Ben was hostile to me. Many times he would see my face, and I wouldn't have to say anything, and he would already be yelling at me, telling me to get out of the room. Why are you here? Leave me alone. But I can't. Ben also suffered from a stroke, and he has advanced dementia, and he needs help. So a successful businessman who was well respected in his community. Now Ben has become incontinent, and you could imagine how this would have made him feel. Like he always prided himself on being very neat, being very punctual, and being very proper. He would get out of bed every single morning. He wants to dress himself, but he can't because of his decreased strength in his right side. He can't really dress himself. He can't really go to the toilet, and he has now become incontinent. And imagine how that would feel in the mind of a proper businessman back in his days, who used to be the life of the party, who used to be really social, who has to be really outgoing and speak to clients and shaking everybody's hand. And now, this independent man has been reduced to something, to someone who he's not. Imagine how that would feel. So Ben has a lot of, anger. And I don't know if this is because of the disease process or because of this frustration that he has realized that he's no longer himself anymore. Whatever it might be, Ben is not himself anymore. And that's painful. It's painful for both him and for his visitors. His loved ones, his family and friends. They can't bear to look at him like this. But yet they still come around. So many of them. Because they don't look at him for what he is now, but because of what his life was. Ben lived a good life, and many remember, and many will remember him for it. That's why they're still coming around. Now, my grandmother, she was a really good shopkeeper, and she was a wonderful woman who looked after all of us kids when our parents went to work. In a traditional Vietnamese family, sometimes the children never leave the house. My uncles and aunties actually lived with my grandparents until the very last moments of their life. And even after they've passed away, they never left home. So you can imagine this big family living in one house. All of our parents have gone to work. So my grandmother was looking after all of us kids. She would, feed us, bathe us, take us to school. She looked after us until we were in primary school, until she started getting a little bit of that dementia. And so I used to really respect her, and I wished I have had this knowledge, this experience of looking after people with dementia before she succumbed to this disease. I used to really admire her, and I remember one day after she got us kids back from primary school, I told my mom about this. I wrote a poem about grandmother. I said she's a wonderful shopkeeper, and she's a wonderful grandmother for looking after us kids when you and dad are at work. I really loved my grandmother. I adored her. But then as we became teenagers, and my grandmother started getting more advanced in her dementia, she would be wandering the house every single night, scaring us kids. I thought she was a ghost one time when I was hanging out with my cousins in their bedroom, and my grandmother would, open the door unannounced. We never saw her coming, and everyone would scream. Why are you coming into our room, Grandma? All of us kids would yell back at her, and she doesn't even recognize any one of us anymore, and that's painful. That's not my grandmother. That's what I thought to myself. But yeah, she would always be remembered. And I think part of the reasons why my uncles and aunties and even my mom sometimes feel motivated to look after my grandmother, even though she was really hard to manage towards the end of her life, is because we remember her for her life. We don't think of her in this way anymore. Like, we don't look at her because of her disease process and what she's now. We look after her because of our memories of her and her life. That's what we remember her for. And, I still think about Ben often, and he will always remain in my heart, I think, as my patients, because I just see these visitors coming in every day to see Ben, even though Ben is really nasty towards them. And yet they still show up because of his life. They don't look at him because of what he is now, like a cantankerous old man who has incontinence issue, and he's nasty towards everyone. They don't look at him like that. They remember Ben, for what he lived for, his life. They honor that. And that's how you give, that's how you respect these people. That's how you give them back their dignity. There's nothing dignifying about dying like this. Nothing. I'm telling you, there's nothing dignifying about dying in this state. It's a horrible disease. You're confused, you're angry at the world, you're in pain all the time. There's nothing dignifying about this. And putting them through a bunch of medications to sedate them and making them feel, unconscious. There's nothing dignifying about this. I'll tell you what is dignifying about this. Honoring their lives and remembering them for their life, what they lived for. Anyways, my mom actually talked to me yesterday about my grandfather, who recently passed away. And she said he used to send her a lot of letters when she was a young woman in her university days. And my mom didn't really think much about those letters up until now. She said she might have chucked them away or put them in places that she can't remember. But my grandfather actually collected all of this and compiled them into an archive. And my mom said she's going to look at them now that she has more time. And I think about these videos that I'm making. You know how I said before how I think these videos are pointless? There's no purpose? I think there might be a purpose. And when my mom said this about my grandfather, I became really inspired. I want to know about my grandpa's life, and I want him to live on in our memories, and I want him to live on through me. And maybe, in a way, by making these videos, the later generations of our family can one day, hopefully, stumble across these videos and learn about me, and 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 see what it was like to live in a time long ago. In a way, this will become a part of the collective consciousness of our species. These videos, they are cultural artifacts. This is how you live on in your children. And my grandfather, even though he has departed, he's living on in our memories. He's living on in our collective consciousness. And I want to read all of that. So yeah, I don't know when I'm going to be releasing these videos back into the public eyes again, but I'm going to keep making them just for this purpose. I'm not teaching anyone anything. I'm merely just documenting, really. Anyways, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me. I hope your day has been well. Stay strong. God bless. And I'll speak to you soon.